students, for this lecture, we'll be covering time and motion. Time and motion takes many different forms and configurations when it comes to art, and I mixed in lots of different video clips to demonstrate how time and motion plays into these different art forms. There'll be some trailers on different movies that are art films. One of them is a film that takes 24 hours to watch, and there will be some clips of different kinetic sculptures. Those are sculptures that have been created to move. So please enjoy this lecture on time and motion. Thank you.
Today's topic is time and motion. So elements of art, we're doing time and motion. The aim of every artist is to arrest motion, which is life, by artificial means, and hold it fixed so that 100 years later, when a stranger looks at it, it moves again, since it is life. So that's William Faulkner. He's basically saying, if you're a good artist, you're able to capture motion. Most traditional media, painting, most notably painting, sculpture, are static, but artists find ways to indicate motion, the passage of time, and the appearance of motion in the static medium. Also, new technology and media such as film and video allow artists to capture motion in film. The two kinds of motion that we're going to be concerned with today are implied motion and actual motion. Let's look at a couple of photographs. This is Sam Shear, 1937 photograph of the Hindenburg blowing up. So again, static picture, but a great sense of motion here. We know that this blimp is going down, exploding. Very famous photograph. This is a photograph of Kevin Dyson in the Super Bowl 1999. This was the last play of the game. They needed a touchdown to tie the game, and he was tackled by London Fletcher on the 1 yard line. Didn't make the score. So an incredible moment, frozen in time. We can sense his desperation to get the ball 1 yard further. This is Eddie Adams' execution of Nguyen Van Lim, 1969. This photograph won the Pulitzer Prize, journalism photography, and it was a South Vietnamese general ended up shooting this man who was suspected of being part of the North Korean faction. So this photograph exposed a lot of the corruption that was happening, the realities of Vietnam. And so how do artists depict the passage of time and motion? Motion occurs when an object changes location or position. So if an object is changing position or location, it's directly linked to time. Artists can communicate motion by implying time or creating the illusion of it. Well, any artwork that deals with events must show how time goes by. And artists find ways to communicate the passage of time and remind us of time's influence. So again, implied motion and actual motion are the two kinds of motion we're going to talk about today. Let's start with implied motion. So implied motion is motion. This type of motion is used in static works of art. Its visual cues tell us that the work portrays motion. We do not actually see the motion happening though. So they're static. We don't actually see it happening. Let's take a look at this. This is Gian Lorenzo Bernini, very famous sculptor from the 17th century. So Bernini here is capturing the sun god Apollo, who falls madly in love with the wood nymph Daphne, begs to be saved by her father Peneus. So she runs away terrified, and her father ends up saving her by transforming her into a bay laurel tree. So how does motion get conveyed in this picture, or this sculpture, which is static? Well, there's diagonal lines. Diagonal lines always create a sense of motion, dynamicism in a composition. Her hands are slowly turning into leaves. Her legs are turning into bark. And there's also a sense of motion captured in their faces. She's gasping at that moment that she's being changed. So it's this pivotal moment, frozen in time. This is Giacomo Balla, Dynamism of a Dog on a Leash. So this is from 1912. Well, back in the early 1900s, it's hard for us to believe this now, but in the early 1900s, when the Industrial Revolution was really starting to get into full swing, the world would have moved at a lot slower pace. There was no motion, no photographic motion, no video, and people were actually afraid of the speed that machines would travel because they were unused to this. Coming up to World War I, which was a real nightmare of mechanical destruction. So Balla was an Italian futurist. He was trying to look into the future, imagine what motion might be like in the future. So he conveys a sense of emotion in this with a series of repeating marks. We have the dog's feet are repeated over and over and over again to convey that sense of motion. So, and also the leash you can see swinging back and forth, and the foot of the person walking the dog. So all this kind of adds to this sense of motion, even though it's just a static image. We get a sense that there is feet scurrying, leash wobbling back and forth. So artists create an illusion of motion through visual tricks. Our eyes are deceived into believing there is motion as time passes, even though there's no motion actually occurring. Marcel Duchamp, who a few of you, I mentioned his urinal piece, fountain piece in connection to the banana, but he also did some paintings. This is called Nude Descending a Staircase. So this painting shocked the world when it came out in 1912 and was showed at the Armory Show in New York. It's a reinterpretation of the nude. So the nude is a nude descending a staircase. It's broken into geometric shapes. There's a sense of motion coming through this, sort of like the dog. These repeated shapes, the body broken into geometrics and monochrome colors, and this sense of maybe a hip bone moving, some legs moving. the head in motion up here. So this trying to capture this nude in the process of moving down a staircase. So the critics had a field day with this picture at the Armory Show. They called it, one critic called it a explosion in a shingle factory. So it was mocked by the press. Here's a cartoon of it. Seeing New York with a cubist, the rude descending a staircase, rush hour at the subway. Now Thomas Eakins, also in photography, using a long exposure. This is early photography, late 1800s, early 1900s. He does a long exposure where that's when you leave the shutter open for a long time, and then it captures a blurred sense of motion because it's recording the light as it moves over that whole time period that the shutter's open. So we get this double jump, this sense that the child is jumping. Even though it's just one image, these repeated forms tell us that it's all the same person. Edgar Degas, Frenzy of Dancers. So this one is in a similar vein, the ballerinas adjusting their shoes, lacing up. This one could be interpreted as maybe one person from different angles, or maybe it's a group of dancers all. Artists often seek to tell a story. This can be in a single painting. Some artists examine the cycles of time. This is a painting from the 1400s. It's from the workshop of the master of Osservanza, and it's the meeting of it's the meeting of Saint Anthony and Saint Paul. So what we have going on here is this is all taking place over a period of time. We start out up here with St. Anthony setting off on the path. You can see the path coming through the woods here. Then he comes down and he meets the Centaur, who is a symbol in Greek mythology of Bacchus, who is basically the god of earthly temptation. But St. Anthony is not tempted by Bacchus, so he continues on and eventually embraces St. Paul the hermit, who he finds coming out of his cave here. So we get all this happening within the same painting, this passage of time, almost like a comic book, like a medieval version of a comic book. Same type of thing happens here in this relief, Trajan's Column, completed in 113 AD. What happens in Trajan's Column is it's a relief that wraps and tells the entire story of Trajan's victory in the Dacian Wars. So this was a great campaign that he went on, and the whole thing is chronicled as it wraps around. You can see there's detail. Almost like a form of political propaganda, but as a wraparound comic, moving up this pillar. So time going through chronicling the history of Trajan's victory. And then in modern times, of course, Paul Jenkins here did some Spider-Man. We get a sense of dialogue, of motion, people talking. This is the strategy they use in comic books. Frank Miller, you get a list of inventory of the things that Marv here is going to take with him to fight this villain, Yellow Bastard. Alan Moore, another great comic artist who made The Watchmen. So he has Rorschach here on top walking and then going down into this bar. So we get a passing of time based on panels that give us more information as we move through the page. So this is a different way that time can be thought about conceptually through painting. Ankawara made the Today series, where he painted the date of the day that he was painting on a canvas every day, and he made about 3,000 of these paintings. They started in 1966 and they went on sporadically until he died in 2014. And he would make about 60 to 200 and something of these a year. So every single day there's just a painting with the date on it. How can that make you think about time and the passing of time? Op art, Victor Vasarely and Bridget Riley. So with op art, there is an optical illusion created that gives us a sense of motion in art. So here's Bridget Riley's Cataracts #3. This artwork is an example. If we focus on a single point in the work, the image appears to vibrate. We can see this optical illusion because Riley uses sharp contrast and hard jet graphics set to close together. If you go ahead and take a look and you stare at it a little bit, you'll notice that this one has kind of a crazy motion to it. It may hurt your eyes a little bit. You may like it, but because of the way the manipulation of the optics in it, there is this sense that it is moving. This is Cornelia Parker. Cornelia Parker is known for her sculptures of objects exploding or floating. So this is a great piece. It's a picture of a shed that is exploding. So she found a shed that she blew up into pieces, and then she took all those pieces and hung them from the ceiling with a light illuminated in the middle. And that way it would look as if there's an explosion happening and everything's flying in all directions. So actual objects frozen in time, defying gravity in a way that gives us this sense that they're at that moment when they're just at the very beginning of their journey, exploding into pieces. There's a video to watch on Cornelia Parker and how she did this. Dali challenges notions of time and twists reality to bring into question melting clocks. He bends time, subverts the irrational, questions unreal objects, but he renders them very realistically. He depicts them with clarity and accuracy, as if actually seeing these convincing objects. Impossible things that happen. You can't really see a clock melt. But this is as if he's a surrealist, so it's as if it comes from a dream. He's thinking about the relativity of time. Think about relativity and liquid. So time being different from different people's vantage point. Traveling at the speed of light. Einstein comes out with the theory of relativity in 1905. People start thinking about time very differently. Now we've talked about implied motion. Let's talk about some actual motion in art. We see actual motion in artworks that change in real space and time. Examples include kinetic art, a work that contains moving parts, and performance art. In performance art, the artist's intention is to create an experience rather than an object. Another type of art that we'll see it in is film, video, and what we call stroboscopic motion. Stroboscopic motion, 2 or more static images in quick succession to show movies. This is Edward Muybridge. In 1879, there was a debate going on as to whether or not all 4 of a horse's legs ever touched the ground at the same time. And Edward Maybridge took a series of photographs that he then strung together. The first instance of motion with an animal captured in what they would later be called film has a sequence of images next to each other, and when you line them up quickly, it looks as if it's in motion. So the horse, as you see here, the horse's legs actually do all leave the ground for one moment, so he wins the debate. He also did a version of the new descending a staircase here. Animation is another way, basically a further evolution of the stroboscopic motion. This is the Isle of Dogs, a Wes Anderson movie. This movie was compiled from individual frames that were generated using stop motion. So animator produces a sequenced frames that are played in rapid succession, committed to film or digital media so that it can be made for theaters. So, and this is also the technique used in Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas and the Ray Harryhausen. Here, we'll look at a clip of how he did it. But these are clay figures that are moved just a little bit each time and photographed. And then when they're played together, it creates this special effect where it appears that they're in motion. Let's go back to Marcel Duchamp. So this is Bicycle Wheel. It's a ready-made from 1951. Remember when we talked about the fountain and we talked about the banana? So taking regular objects from your daily life and putting them together in a way that, recontextualizing them in a way that they make sense for an art context. This was another ready-made he made, which is a bicycle wheel drilled into a stool. And actually the bicycle wheel will spin. So this is a sculpture, a kinetic sculpture, in that the sculpture actually moves. Now let's take a look at Rebecca Horn. Rebecca Horn is known for her performance arts and performance art. One of her pieces is they're often dealing with body augmentations, or what she calls body extensions. So this one is these pencils are strapped onto her face and then she will write with her head. Or this one, she has these big, super long finger extensions that she picks up things with. Urs Fischer is a contemporary sculptor. This is a piece that he did where he creates these sculptures out of wax. This one is where a gentleman's looking at a phone, and then he lights them on fire, and they slowly melt over time. So you get an actual sense of motion in that the sculpture is disintegrating as it goes. Some of you may have seen this piece before. It became an internet sensation a few years ago. Sun Yan and Peng Yu. This one is it's a machine which basically yanks this bloody looking or oily looking substance that leaks out of it, and it endlessly Sisyphean task of pulling this liquid back towards itself over and over again. It's a mess. It sprays things. It's been called a commentary on industrialization, on the inability to clean up the environment. There's many different interpretations of it. Some artists will do what you call bioart, which this is a piece by Suzanne Anker. This is artists using biological and organic materials to indicate the passage of time in their artwork. So that's what bioart is. Organic matter grows and degrades, so work by bioartists is always changing. All right, here's Astroculture Shelf Life by Suzanne Anker. It's the same piece as this one. So in Anker's bioart she experiments with how plants might react in artificial conditions, using LED lights instead of sunlight to provide nourishment. So this blurs the line between science and art. Somewhat of an experiment. Maybe you wouldn't even call it art. This is another artwork, Ron Lambert. It's called Sublimate Cloud Cover. So it's made out of water, vinyl, humidifier, steel, aluminum, and acrylic. Lambert created a large, transparent plastic environment in which water endlessly evaporates and condenses. So this shows how the rhythms of nature become a measurement of natural time, make us aware of how water, similar to the condensing cube that we looked at earlier in the year. This is the Cirque du Soleil performing totem. So Cirque du Soleil, if you've been to Vegas, you might know what they are. They're a acrobatic group that basically performs art in the form of interpretive dance. So they were formed in 1984. This troupe is a touring entertainment act. Cirque du Soleil is French for Circus of the Sun. It integrates music and acrobatics, enacted before a live audience. There's a great show at the Bellagio. If you've never seen it, check it out next time you're in Vegas. So Alexander Calder is made of many kinetics, what you call kinetic sculptures. So those are sculptures that move. And he did this sort of childlike play with these circus sculptures, which you can check out in the module this week. There's a video on his circus play sculptures, but these are what he's more well known for, these kinetic sculptures. So these are mobiles. Alexander Calder invented the mobile. It's a type of kinetic sculpture, relies on air currents to power its movement. It constantly changes. His final sculpture is made of the counterbalance between organic shapes. So it's all about balance. Little one balancing with the leverage to create these very subtle balances that then will respond to any kind of changes in the wind resistance. So he is the inventor of the mobile. Charles Ray. This is the Clock Man, another performance piece. So he sat inside of it. Charles Ray actually sat inside of this giant clock with his feet hanging out, and he moved the hands of the clock based on perception of the time passing. So maybe he's in there for only 15 minutes, but it seems like it's been hours, so he's going to move the clocks a lot faster. So he's just moving the clock around based on how slow or fast he feels the time is going. Accentuates time. Jean Tingley, who's a Dada artist, there's sort of a nonsensical aspect to the Dada. But Jean does, his sculptures are all about overproduction, automation. They're satire of capital factories, a Rube Goldberg machine, a machine that is way overly complex and does something fairly trivial. Very interesting artist. So Janssen's sculptures, the Strom beasts, are carefully designed to appear to move by themselves. Remarkable appearance of continuous movement that looks like an animal walking. So they're also powered by the wind, and they move around, they respond to the environment. They're wind powered. They're just incredible, incredibly complex and beautiful sculptures. You can imagine that there may be some sort of application to these pieces in our daily life in the future. But he just lets these things wander around and they do their own thing and watch what they want. That's really cool. This is a very interesting piece by Ai Weiwei. It's also a very controversial piece. Dropping a Han Dynasty urn, 1995, 3 black and white photographs. So in this piece, Ai Weiwei does a political performance. He takes a 2,000-year-old Han Dynasty urn and he just drops it. The piece is composed of 3 black and white photographs that are big. They're 50 by 40 inches. So they're really big, big triptych images that he uses. So triptych means that there's 3 images. There's a before, a during, and an after. And he shatters it with no reaction. Is he being careless? Why would he trash this 2,000-year-old priceless urn? It's a valuable and treasured symbol of the tradition and skill. So through time and motion, Ai Weiwei acknowledges both the antiquity and the importance of the object. The images link the old and the new in the Chinese art and culture. So one of the reasons why he did this was as a protest against the Chinese government, who had been destroying ancient sites for new building, for new construction. So Ai Weiwei is saying this is basically what you're doing to our culture. And by creating this piece, he brought a lot of awareness. He brought a lot of controversy. He created a lot of publicity for destroying this 2,000-year-old urn. I mean, the first question you're going to have when you see someone drop a 2,000-year-old urn with no expression is why? Why? So if you do a little research, you get some understanding of why that's the case in this piece.
Olafur Eliasson did this weather project.
In this project, he brought 200 bulbs in to create a giant sun inside the Tate Modern. There was also a reflective mirror on the ceiling and fog that permeated the ground, asking the audience members to participate and reevaluate their relationship to the sun. You walk around, you see yourself on the ceiling, you see the bright, beautiful object in front of you. So this is an installation and an interactive installation in which you become part of the art piece based on the way that you
weather
project. It's his most famous installation, a large-scale immersive this installation fuses art, science, and natural phenomena. Michelangelo Pistoletto, he does mirror painting, so he paints on mirrors. You can see that he paints these figures straight on the mirrors. And that way, when you as an audience member come, you interact with the mirror. So you add the sense of time in that you see yourself moving in the flat image. Anna Mendieta from the Silhouetta series, 1973, 1977. So in these pieces, she documents through live performance these subtle ideas of identity and the passing of time and nostalgia. There's the imprint of her body. These irreversible past is washed away by the ocean. Humans are not meant to last. When we die, plants will grow up through our body. Performance pieces that were documented with photographs, and they give us a sense of passing time. Finally, let's talk about film. So film is made up of multiple different parts. We have a frame, so that's a static single image, maybe like something like this. And this can come in the form of a close-up, a medium shot, or a long shot. So this would be a single frame close-up. This one's medium shot. We get a sense of that there's a gas station. We know a little more. And then for the final long shot, we get a sense that there's some kind of factory. There's gas. There's an explosion. A sense of danger. Maybe it would create a bigger explosion. So a shot is a continuous group of frames. So a shot would be, these are all frames, but a shot could be this zoomed out. So the shot would be this single action that's happening, and then a sequence of them that reveals more information as we pull out. So it combines together for a scene, and then a sequence is a combination of shots and scenes together. So frame, shot, scene, sequence. So each one fits inside the other one. A frame is a single image. A shot is a collection of frames. A scene is a collection of different shots, and then a sequence is a collection of scenes together. These are other areas to consider when you're talking about film. You have a sequence, the tempo that the sequence is moving, the duration, what kind of motion is going on, what kind of energy is going on in the shot, sequence, scene, and then the scope. Well, how big of a scope are we covering? So take, for instance, this scene from Pulp Fiction. We have the duration may be 5 seconds per shot. The tempo may be every 16 frames, so every 16 images you have a cut. The intensity of this is probably medium. You have 2 people talking, so somewhat, unless if they're talking about something really intense, it would be sort of a medium amount of energy. The scope of it is fairly limited in that it's just 2 people talking in a small restaurant, and then the setting, of course, we can tell is a diner, just a normal everyday diner with 2 people talking. So we get all the duration, tempo, intensity, scope, and setting. The context are all established through these 2 people talking here. Run, Lola, Run, which is a 1998 film, is an interesting film in that the plot of this film follows Lola, who's this red-haired girl, who must save her boyfriend within 20 minutes. And every time she fails to save her boyfriend, the story reboots, and this happens 3 times, and each time with a new set of circumstances. So it gives us a rewind, a mulligan, so to speak, as to figure out this problem. The film reinterprets time and demonstrates the impact that a few seconds difference can make. So every time she makes a choice, it creates a new set of circumstances. These are real-time movies. I mean, once they started the camera, the whole movie takes place in real time. High noon takes place the 2 hours before the showdown between the policeman and a criminal that's coming to have a duel with him. Before sunset, 2 people are having a romance walking through Paris, and the whole movie is their conversation and their interactions and walking through the city. And then this movie, Rope, which is a murder mystery that Alfred Hitchcock came out with. The whole movie takes place at a dinner party where the two hosts are trying to hide a body of a person that they murdered inside of a cabinet. So these are all taking place in real time. As far as a massive scope goes, the movie Tree of Life the scope of it is incredible in that it goes from the small everyday lives of Brad Pitt and his children in a Texas town growing up to the son's life in the future, and then it goes way into the future, the end of time, and it goes way back to the beginning of time when the planets were forming and life was just being created. So it has an enormous sense of scope, which is something you can do in film, is string together a narrative scope in a way that you can't with other medium. Graphic and spatial relationship. This is Stanley Kubrick made this cut in a film. It takes place in prehistoric times, and then it cuts to the future. Let's watch this. We got the bone flying into the air, and then when it comes down, it turns into a spaceship. So there's a graphic creates this graphic and spatial relationship, in that the bone, the shape of the bone as it goes up, comes down in the form of a spaceship. So if you see the movie, the beginning of the movie is apes fighting with bones, and then it cuts into, after the ape throws the bone, it cuts way into the future where man has evolved to the point where they have spaceships. Finally, Christian Marclay, this is The Clock, which is a movie, and the trailer for it will be in the module, but it's a movie which takes place over a 24-hour period of time. So if you want to watch it, you have to, it's only played at museums and only played at art museums, and you go in and you have to sit for 24 hours and watch this movie unfold. And all the clocks in the movie are in sync with the clocks of real life, so that if it's 12 o'clock at if it's 1:30 in the morning in the movie, it's 1:30 in the morning at night as well. So it's all synced up together. So my question to you for that one is, would you like to go and try that? Would you be interested in attending a movie for 24 hours? All right, so that's it for time and motion. Some of these pieces will be in the discussion for the week, and also take a look at the supplementary material in the module. There's a lot that you need to view for motion, because it's best to view art about motion as it's in motion. All right, so thank you, and enjoy the next lecture as well.